I cannot wait to see what this place looks like when it's done. We have a big project ahead of us. We're moving to a warehouse that is 5 times the size of our current space. We have to figure out how to renovate that space and lay it out in a way that's going to make sense for us. And all of that needs to be done with enough time for us to actually physically move all of our items in by January 6th of 2025. It is currently November 18th, and we were supposed to have 3 full months to do this. However, negotiating the lease took a while, and we are now trying to organize all of the renovations. So nothing has really happened in the warehouse, and we originally got access to it about like a week and a half-ish ago. We've only done a little bit of like DIYing. So far we have power washed the loading dock and painted over it because it was looking a little cruddy. We've pulled off the baseboards from all of the walls, and we moved all of the furniture that was left by the previous tenants on the office side into the warehouse side so that we could remove the flooring and replace it with new, not middle school lunchroom tile, because that's what we currently have. And we took some stuff off the wall. So there's still a big to-do list, but it's been a really big challenge for me because basically we, on the office side, need to replace the flooring, paint the walls. There's a bunch of like Ethernet cables because this has been an office since 1990. There are a ton of like phone lines, and then some of the previous tenants had phone hookups in every office, but then also had a bunch of Ethernet cables and sound system cables. So there's just a lot of like old wiring that we need to figure out. And the previous tenants, I think, put in all the wrong light bulbs because there's a really loud like buzzing sound. So we need to replace the light bulbs. Also, since the place is like what now, 30 years old, 35 years old, it just has like a lot of things that have been changed or fixed over the years, but that now don't match. So like none of the baseboards really matched. None of the doors really match. The like hardware on the doors, the handles and stuff, don't match. All the light switch covers and electrical plate covers don't match. And these are like not huge things, but I do want the office to look nice, and we could replace those easy and just spruce it up a little. None of the ceiling tiles match, but I'm just letting that one go because that's the landlord's responsibility and I don't know anything about ceiling tiles. So whatever. Definitely replacing the floors and putting up some paint, and that'll make a huge difference. But we have to paint the warehouse a little bit because it's all black and red, and then we also have to paint the office, but I only want painters to come on one day because that would save a lot of money. And then there's also, because of the baseball academy, a bunch of holes in the insulation cover in the warehouse because people threw baseballs up there or hit baseballs up there, and it like punctured the like plastic cover that goes over the insulation that keeps it in place so the warehouse can stay climate controlled. That also is not like most attractive thing I've ever seen. So we're trying to figure out how to do that. And that's just been a whole process. So we have just one more thing to do before we figure out exactly how we're painting. There was a big question of whether we were patching the holes and painting over it, if we were going to paint the warehouse all black or if we were going to paint it all white. I just want it to be neutral though in general. So anyways, all of that said, here's our current order of operations. We have people who are coming in and replacing the floor on the office side, and that's already on the schedule for right before Thanksgiving. They needed to come before the painters because they don't install baseboards, and the painters will install baseboards for us. The flooring people also wouldn't demo the current baseboards, so we did that ourselves. And then once we get a quote for covering up the insulation cover in the warehouse with sheet metal, that's just all white, then I can schedule the painters, because if we cover up all of that insulation cover, then we don't need to paint it. And so the painters have to go before the sheet metal people, but I need the quote for the sheet metal people before I schedule the painters so I can tell them what they're actually painting and what's going to get covered up. That's been very tricky. So we got flooring, painters, and then sheet metal. Hopefully the painters and the sheet metal company will be able to work relatively quickly and won't make us wait a few weeks like the flooring people did. And I think that should work out, because otherwise we're going to lose some very precious time with the warehouse being done with renovations. We do need like a few weeks in between renovations being done and actually moving so we can perfect the layout and tape down everywhere in the warehouse where the stuff that we're actually moving from here to there is going to go, because I'm trying to move our inventory in as little time as possible so that we don't have to stop taking orders for very long. Because if we stop taking orders, then we don't bring any money in. And if we don't bring any money in, then there's still a lot of like operating costs that we have for like, you know, the days or weeks that we're shut down. And so that's just very hard from like a cash flow perspective. And last time that we moved, that was kind of like a struggle a little bit, and so I'm trying to minimize it as much as possible. It really makes you think about how they always have that phrase like time is money. That's so real when you have an overhead with business. And we also are starting to pay rent at the new place. We negotiated a little bit of time where we don't have to pay rent, and so obviously I want to be up and running by the time we actually have to start paying the rent. So all of that considered, there's just like 10 million factors that I'm trying to juggle and piece together, but I think the renovations will be good. I think it'll look really nice and be a huge transformation once those are done. And then my big hope is that we'll have enough time to do the proper planning to make the move very smooth. And if we hire movers for like 1 or 2 days, that we can get them to move everything over, and then once they're at the new warehouse, we can tell them exactly where to go with each item they're unloading without having to just like dump it all by the doors and then us have to sort it out, because that's what we did last time and it was exhausting. To be fair, last time I had no idea how to lay out a warehouse and I had no like considerations, and we also didn't even have like even like a quarter of the employees that we had like a few weeks later. So that was just like going in blind. But now we have some experience under our belt and I have some things to go off of, and I'm figuring out how to lay out the warehouse. So we are tackling like a couple of minor projects ourselves, and then we're hiring out painters and the sheet metal company and the flooring. We kind of decided that based on like what needs to happen as soon as possible, we're kind of trying to do on our own. But I'm also trying to minimize the stuff that we're DIYing because it's a huge space. So even if we wanted to like go in and, for example, we have to get the warehouse floor cleaned. If we wanted to go in and like mop it up ourselves, that would take a full day of like multiple people because it is 10,000 square feet. So we're going to hire somebody to come in with a cleaning machine and like drive across the warehouse with the little buffer, because we just don't have like a full day to spend in there and it just wouldn't be efficient, whereas we could hire somebody to do that. But pulling off the baseboards was easy, so we just did that real quick, and we needed to do that before the flooring people came, and they weren't going to do that for us. And then like there's some things we need to pull off the wall, and like there's some wires that we need to take a look at and see if we can cut or what we have to do with them so that they're safely out of the way. So that's stuff that we can kind of figure out ourselves. And also we had the Wi-Fi already installed there, so we could figure out like what line we definitely needed to keep versus all the other potential like hookups that we could have used for Wi-Fi. And then power washing the dock wasn't like a huge deal, so my husband Taryn did that for us, and then we just quick painted the loading dock because that only took like a couple of hours. I'm thinking about potentially painting the door frames and painting the actual doors so that they are all the same color. So I have to get a quote from the painters for that, and then I'll figure out if it's something that like, oh, we could do that in a Saturday. It's not like a huge job, versus like if it's very expensive from the painters. Our time is obviously like valuable, but it's more free than hiring somebody. But people who have like paint sprayers or just like general experience or machinery doing some of these services for us, we definitely want to hire out. It's just kind of like a cost benefit. We do have a budget that I'm trying to stay in for like the warehouse move and renovations. And so I'm trying to stay within that. If we go a little bit over because, you know, we hired someone to do something 10 times quicker than we would have done it, then that's cool with me. Definitely a fixer-upper over there. And it's so big that like everything costs $10,000 minimum. Like it's just so crazy. There's a bunch of adhesive on the floor from where the baseball academy had glued down mats that they had in the whole area to practice on. And if we wanted to like scrape all the glue off of the warehouse floor, that alone is like $10,000. So we're just cleaning that up. It's not like a huge hindrance. And yeah, like ceiling tiles, they are not in the best shape, but it's the ceiling, so we're just gonna leave that. There's also like cords that are hanging down that the baseball academy left from when they were hanging up their batting cages. So there's like wires and hooks in the wall that the wires are connected to. And we could go in there and like rent a scissor lift and go up and try and cut those down and stuff. But they're not really in our way. So it's just kind of like, they'll probably stay there. There is something I am not sure about, which is in the back corner of the warehouse above the warehouse office, there's like a big HVAC unit and a bunch of cinder blocks and a bunch of plywood. And I had the landlord take a look at it and see what all that stuff was. And he's like, oh, we'll just leave that HVAC unit there even though it doesn't work. And I was like, okay. Well, I guess if it's not hurting anybody there. But there is a bunch of cinder blocks and a bunch of wood, so I don't really know what all that is. And we're going to just see if it's like doing something or if it's just kind of laying around. So that's all kind of just stuff to be investigated. There's also this big closet in the warehouse that looks scary. There are so many wires. I think it used to be like a phone board. So we'll have to see about that one. To be determined. The whole place is just a fascinating Pandora's box of like things that previous tenants have left around. Definitely a fixer-upper over there. Thanks so much for watching to the end. And if you want to hear more about how we're making all of the decisions as far as laying out our new warehouse and trying to plan for our move, watch for part 2. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment any questions. If you have any experience with warehouse moves, definitely let me know. And if you have questions about how we're going to pull all this off or just any other general small business questions, let me know.